Matt,
Yeah.
how's your German? Of course, I had to ask you this while you were eating something.
I've got a sweet.
Very
Sorry.
unprofessional.
It is.
Since Matt's an old man, he had to take out his Werther's original.
It's actually a Maxton's stupidly sour head splitter. Actually,
Oh, head splitter. Sounds stupidly sour. Nice.
That is so deeply, deeply elder millennial Gen X of you, Matt. Sweets aren't cool enough. We got to make them radical, super sour head splitters. When you open it up, just like The Offspring plays.
Yeah.
Or Drowning Pool.
Yes.
Or teenage dirtbag.
Yes. So, Matt, how is your German?
Heutzutage ein bisschen schwach. Ich habe vorher ein Diplom. Ich habe Deutsch studiert. Aber ja, heutzutage ich benutze es kaum. Sadly. Not as good as it used to be.
That means nothing to me. I'm currently learning Chinese because we're entering the Chinese century, and I welcome our overlord Xi Jinping. We will be the #1 tattoo podcast in China within 5 years.
Ni hao.
Remember when we shared a bed in Germany?
I do remember that very fondly. Mainly because you booked the accommodation for the following month.
Yeah. But I found out that you sleep like Nosferatu, which is very funny.
What does that mean?
In the coffin?
So Matt sleeps with his arms crossed and with his feet flat on the bed with his knees in the air, which was very strange.
Oh, yeah, I do do that. That is true, yeah.
But you've probably heard that we are joined by a third voice today on Beneath the Skin, the show about the history of everything told through the history of tattooing. I am one of your co-hosts, Thomas O'Mahony, and I'm joined as ever by my esteemed co-host, Dr. Matt Lauder, and we are joined by another esteemed doctor. Matt, would you like to introduce our guest?
Yeah, well, I think we're on a mission on this podcast to get every single person with any faculty in English who has a PhD in anything tattoo related to come on the show. And we should have got you on earlier, Ole. Welcome to the show, Dr. Ole Wittmann, expert in German tattoo history, brilliant chap, spirits entrepreneur, as we'll talk about in a minute. How are you doing, Ole?
I'm doing fine, but also it's a very turbulent times right now.
Yeah,
and thanks for having me.
Well, just super quickly, do you want to just introduce yourself? So you did your PhD. We were doing our PhDs about the same time, actually. Maybe you were a little bit after me, but we were sort of doing our PhDs at the same time, right?
Yeah, I did it a little bit after you. Your thesis was already written when I started, and I wrote about tattooing and fine art.
Yeah,
and
in a really good book that's not been translated into English. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was about iconography of tattoos, of placement, of reception, and all that stuff.
And then you did this big, which we'll talk about a lot. You went on to do a big exhibition on the German tattooer Christian Warlich, right? And you've published a few books on Karl Finke, another German tattooer.
Yeah, Karl Finke, Warlich, yeah.
And now, as we'll talk about straight up, you're running a spirits brand sort of named after Christian Warlich.
Exactly. Yeah.
So tell us about that. How did that happen?
Oh, that happened because Christian Warlich, who was the German king of tattooists, he had a grog pub in Hamburg, St. Pauli, where he tattooed. And so it was kind of like the first public tattoo studio in Germany. And he had this grog thing was common in port cities in the 20th century, where hot water was mixed with rum and sugar. And you could get it there at Warlich's pub. And so I also made a section in the Warlich exhibit about his bar, about the rum topic and everything. And as you know, as a curator, you always think, what can I do for the museum shop or for the opening? And then I thought, well, if we have this rum section in the exhibition, I'll make a Warlich rum to give it out for free at the opening of the exhibition, and I can also sell it in the museum shop while the exhibition is running. And then of course, I had no idea of this stuff at all. So I contacted the oldest spirits manufacturer in Hamburg, which goes back to the middle of the 19th century, and told them about the idea to make a Warlich rum for this cause. And they thought, well, it's a cool idea. We'll do it together. And since then, they're my producers, and I do all the rest. So the rum was created. It was sold in the museum shop, and I thought, since it was going pretty good, I thought, well, why am I only selling this in the museum shop and not in some stores in Hamburg? And then I started to offer it to shops, and so it got more and more. And nowadays I'm doing that almost 99.9% of my time.
You said to me the other day when we were chatting about you coming on here, you were like, from academia to, from historian to rum producer,
definitely. Definitely.
A planned trajectory.
Yeah, because the project, the research project for Warlich ended in the end of 2020, and there was Corona time and everything. And I thought, okay, well, 3 kids working in humanities, which is very often very difficult to get a proper job. I thought, well, okay, now I see that it can even get worse, like with pandemia and stuff like that. So I thought, well, I give it a chance and go all in on rum, and I do the tattoo research as on voluntary basis with the Institute for German Tattoo History.
With Manfred.
With Manfred.
You've changed around your hyphenates to now being a rum impresario first, then historian.
Yeah,
it's funny. It's funny because we won't name your competitor brands, for example, but other tattoo themed rums are available.
Yeah, exactly.
But not so historically coherent and cogent, right?
Yeah, and as I heard, the other person you're talking about was not into alcohol a lot at all. So
no.
So it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But this Warlich things, it came out of the topic. Sense. It was created because of this grog pub, so it made perfect sense.
So you've been selling Warlich themed rum for about 4 or 5 years now, right?
Actually, it started with the exhibition, which was 2019, so it's already the 6th year now. Yeah,
amazing. And the sort of final trigger for me inviting you on, because you've recently run into a little bit of problem, right? Yeah. What's the actual organization called? The German sort of Spirits Union.
Yeah, it's kind of the protective organization of the German spirits industry.
Yeah. Alcohol rules in Germany are very strict, right? Not just for spirits, but for beers. There's all this kind of
we're moving into my area of expertise in a past life, having hosted a podcast about independent brewing. The fucking Reinheitsgebot.
Reinheitsgebot, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a German law, and with spirits, it's a European Union law.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. It's an EU law, and do you want me to talk about the problem?
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. So what happened?
Okay, so I have this rum, and I also have egg liqueur. I learned liquor is spirits and liqueur is liquor. Liqueur. Okay, liqueur. That's why I say it's so strange in this English video version, because I don't know how to liqueur, egg liqueur.
Blame the French.
Yeah. So so I make an egg liqueur since I think 2021, and in 2023 I thought there's no cool vegan alternative, so I made liqueur without egg in 2023. And so now I got sued by this organization, and they are referring to this EU law, and they're saying that liqueur without egg is like an unlawful allusion to the term egg liqueur.
So this is what most people would know as the brand name in England, Advocar, right? Like that's the most famous.
That's like
in England, I think that's the biggest selling version of it to know the kind of spirit we're talking about. It gets called, I think, Advocar is the.
Might be, yeah. That's what. And there's also this term eggnog, but I think eggnog is actually mixed with white wine and water, right?
Yeah, eggnog is like milk and egg white and rum.
Okay. Yeah.
As their kind of Christmas drink. I think people probably do have Advocar in eggnog actually, but I think the egg liqueur thing, the most famous brand of it sold in the UK is Advocar.
So the brand is called Advocat?
I think so, or maybe not.
It is,
it's maybe
okay. It is. It's a Dutch brand of egg liqueur.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. So they don't want me to use the term liqueur without egg, and they don't want me to use the rooster on the label of the bottle because, as we all know, roosters lay eggs.
So their claim against you is that saying this hasn't got egg in it confuses people who to think it might have egg in it.
Yeah, actually, kind of, yes. The thing is, in this EU law, there are the different kinds of alcohol, like rum, egg, liqueur, gin, whatever. And if you want to call your product rum, for example, it has to fulfill certain like characteristics. And if you want to make egg liqueur, it has to have at least a certain amount of alcohol. It has to have a certain amount of egg. And if you don't have that, you can't call it like that. And obviously, you can't call my product egg liqueur because it doesn't have eggs in it. But liqueur without egg is an allusion to egg liqueur, so it couldn't be allowed, they think. So, yeah.
Oh, it's funny because so much of this is actually a consequence of the Reinheitsgebot, which was adopted in 1516 in Bavaria, that only, essentially, if it is beer, it only has water, barley, and hops. And to some extent, Germany loves that kind of rule, but it has informed the European mindset in terms of categorization of spirits and for beer. So I can understand, the EU's emphasis on stuff like consumer protection law. They'd be like, well, how can we assume that someone knows the difference between a hen and a rooster? How do they know that roosters don't lay eggs?
Yeah. And how can you expect people to know that it doesn't contain eggs if it says without egg?
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think isn't
can't
this
accept
the
customers to read.
No.
Isn't this the same problem that like vegan milk producers have had?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like trying to call like almond milk and soy milk and stuff. There was I don't know what the legal status of it is or whatever, but it was like
it's a different legislation, a different law for all kinds of groups. For meat, it's different as for milk and stuff. And so it's like different categories. But the weird thing is like overall, it doesn't matter which category it is, people understand it. So I think it should be if people understand it, it's fine. I mean, there's no. In the end, it's always about customer protection.
Yeah.
And as long as they're not obviously confused, I think it should be totally fine because people are not stupid.
I guess in a weird way, right? Like, okay, I can understand. Maybe people can say, okay, it's almond milk-like beverage or whatever people have to call it on their almond milk bottles. But like, the whole point of your product is it is an egg-free egg liqueur. It's an egg-free. It's an egg-free Advocar. Like, there is no other word that would actually help consumers understand what it was, right? Like,
that's the point. You have to if you cannot at all make an allusion to the thing that's substituted, people do not understand what they buy, and if they do not understand what they buy, there won't be a buying decision. Like the United Nations with the Sustainable Development Goals, the EU with the Green Deal, they all want us to buy stuff that's like good for the planet. But if you can't show people or like if advertisement or product can't describe people what it is, nobody would buy it. So the whole thing wouldn't work,
A very similar case was a few years ago with Funnily enough, I once interviewed the guy who invented Bailey's, Irish cream liqueur, and then with the growing popularity of non-dairy based Irish cream liqueurs, about the advertising around that, because there was like, well, it's not an Irish cream liqueur if there's no dairy in it, etc., etc., and like this is something that they're just like, constantly fighting about.
Yeah. And the thing is, I don't say liqueur without egg liqueur, so I don't even use the word that's the problem. I just say it's liqueur without egg. On the other hand, you can buy egg substitute for cooking. That's allowed to be called egg substitute. And it's like, what? Yesterday was the craziest thing. I went to the drugstore and there was like the stuff, not washing pulver, but the stuff that makes the softener. And it says small softener, and very big, it says almond milk. And you're like, what the hell? I'm buying almond milk here or what? It's like so crazy. It's like so many contradictions and it doesn't make any sense.
So did you just get a letter out of the blue from this?
Yeah.
So this body are kind of like, they're the kind of representative of the spirits industry, and they're sort of charged with sort of overseeing. They have some role of oversight, and they just sent you a letter out of the blue, right? Yeah,
they sent me a letter from their lawyer, of course, and it was just out of the blue. And what's also an interesting fact is that the chairman of this thing is William Verporten, and Verporten is in Germany the market leader for egg liqueur. So it's like, okay, I'm not commenting this. I'm not allowed to, but
But that's something. But you didn't know this was coming.
No.
Wow. So okay, so you get the letter. What do you do? I mean, I would have been so confused.
Yeah, I was confused, especially because there are institutes, like in every country, where you can check food and labels before you put them into the market. Mm-hmm. And I got the name checked by one of those institutes, and they said liqueur without egg is totally fine. So I thought, well, it's no problem at all. And then out of the blue, I got a letter from this lawyer. And yeah, of course, I was shocked and frightened. I mean, there's like this big organization with big brands being in the board. And I thought, holy shit. But on the other hand, I thought, no, I don't see it. I think liqueur without egg is totally fine, and I'll fight for it to get it through. So I contacted a lawyer and talked to them how if there's any chance to go against it. And lawyers only say two things: either they say no chance at all, or there might be a chance. And so we went for it, And now, and of course, because I'm a little company without investors or anything, I didn't have the money to be able to pay for such a big court case, and that's why I started this crowdfunding, which is still running. On www.ohnei.info, where people can support me by ordering products. And by the way, it only works in Germany because we can't send stuff outside of Germany because of customs. But it's possible to support without. But it's possible to support also without consideration and sharing, of course. Like on social media and stuff. But So and that happily so far this goes really well, and this helps us to have money to pay for the court case.
So it'll be, but you're allowed to sell it in the meantime, have they injuncted the sale?
Yeah,
you're allowed to sell in the meantime.
Yeah, I'm allowed to sell it in the meantime. And right now, there's only a special edition available, which is called like a censored edition. And there's a feather of the rooster going across the word egg on the label, so it's like kind of a censored edition.
Oh, as a vegan man, I've not had any Advocar like products for so long. So when I'm next in Germany, which will probably be in the autumn, I'm going to make sure I get myself a bowl.
Great.
It sounds like good luck, man. It sounds so. I mean, like these legal cases are so long and tiring, and they're designed to grind you down. And solidarity. What a ridiculous thing to have to spend your time doing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But good luck.
Thank you.
Probably good. I mean, probably perversely good advertising for the product. Have you had like media interest, like newspapers
a lot.
around?
Yeah. There was like a TV broadcast. There was like almost a full page in Die Zeit, in the national edition of the newspaper. Many more newspaper articles. A lot of support in social media, like regarding the post, people reposting it. I think when I add all the views from all the main posts, it's easily more than 250,000 views altogether. Yeah, so it's like a lot of support, and a lot of people seem to be on my side because there are a lot of supporting comments. So I hope if in Germany the judges always say they decide in the name of the people. And I think if they decide in the name of the people in this case, it should be to my favor.
So, I mean, didn't you also do a court thing with the German tax authorities? Am I misremembering that?
No.
Didn't you do something about the kind of legal recognition of tattooing with Manfred?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, Finanzamt, you're totally right. Yeah, I was how do you say, Gutachter?
Like
how do you say it in English?
I guess like it's like an expert witness kind of thing?
Yeah, an expert witness. Yeah, I had to write like an expert witness paper and stuff because there was a tattoo artist who didn't want to pay tax, like business tax, because he said, I'm not a business, I'm an artist. And then I had to write a report whether his work can be considered as art or not. And I was of the opinion that it can be considered art. And then I went to the court, and the judges were like 5 judges, you know, 3 or 2 main judges and like people. We have people's judges as well. And they were sitting there like, no, sounds totally reasonable. Yeah, okay. They were like considering him as an artist in the end as well. So
because that's the thing that they're trying to do in France as well at national level, because France has a very interesting tax system for artists. And so the tattooist union in France are trying to make the same case about the artistic status in France.
Interesting.
You're just well, I say one man. It's you and Manfred. You and Manfred are like two man German tattoo history advocacy group.
Definitely, yeah. There's some more, luckily, but Manfred and I we founded this Institute for German Tattoo History at the end of the Warlich project, and and Manfred is super. How do you say super? Exact and researching so much stuff. It's amazing.
He's very German. Well, he's a German engineer, isn't he?
Definitely,
Basically,
he's a German research engineer.
Well, you're not doing good for stereotypes.
No. So okay, let's talk about Warlich actually, because I think before I sort of go off on a tangent, just tell us like who Warlich was. So he was born late 19th century?
Yeah, 1891. Born, went to Hamburg, where he got married in Hamburg in 1913. He was originally he was from Hanover, and then he went to Hamburg, also going on ships to New York City at least twice. In the 1910s, and then started tattooing in this grog pub. First, it was like a breakfast pub, and he started there in the 10s and probably took it over in 1919, made his pub, and tattooed there until 1964 when he died. And he was kind of like he professionalized tattooing in Germany very, very much on a high level, because the quality of his drawings and his works was like better than from the guys before, and he also already did a lot of marketing and PR work and stuff like that.
One of these classic guys who we talked a lot about on the show. Everyone you've ever heard of in tattoo history is a guy, or in some cases a gal like that, right? Like who put themselves out there.
Yeah. And also with researchers, which was, of course, very helpful for the research project, because they were guys like Adolf Sparma, like how do you say it? Ethnologists, like European ethnologists, who researched about him, and also others. So there was already a little material there, which was like perfect to build up on.
So I mean, tattooing in Germany, you know, it had that kind of stigma to do with kind of criminality. There was a lot of link with the 19th century eugenics movement in Germany, right, with tattooing being very stigmatized, and so tattooing didn't really have a kind of late 19th century blossoming in Germany like it did in England and in America. But Warlich's coming in, right, like in that almost in that kind of second generation or third generation of European tattooers in the Edwardian period, I guess we'd call it in the UK, where he is he's really trying to, as you said, professionalize things, even as like, so, and also I guess it's an interesting time, right? The Weimar period, like after the First World War, is an interesting period for German art and culture. Anyway, there's lots of interest in tattooing amongst a lot of the German expressionist painters, right? Like Otto Dix, in particular, and Warlich finds himself and in Hamburg, which is still today, but certainly back in the early part of the 20th century, kind of a interesting place, right? Like it's a port. There's a lot of sex and drinking, and you know, it's almost like New York City was at the same time. Like it's a place of kind of, you know, it's a real melting pot. Is that if that's the right place to put it?
People from all over the world, a lot of potential customers, people interested to loosely spend their money for what you mentioned: booze, sex, and tattoos. Booze, sex, and tattoos. That sounds like a cheap documentary. So that, of course, that was a perfect place for tattooists to work. And it's no surprise that the book from the mentioned Adolf Sparma, it was published in 1933, and it's called Tattooing in German Harbor Cities. You already see, okay, of course, tattooing makes a lot of sense in harbor cities. Of course, there were tattooers in other places as well, but there was like a concentration there where there were a lot of customers, of course. Yeah.
And Hamburg, I mean, so Hamburg was an interesting place for tattooing. You mentioned some of the other, so Rodemich in particular really interests me. Another guy who Sparma writes about, who was a porcelain painter in the 1920s before he became a tattooer, right? And then you talked about Carl Finker, but how does Warlich learn to tattoo? How does he get into tattooing?
There's not a lot really known about it. There's one document, one letter he wrote, like an ego document he sent. I think it was to Sparma or to Bellmann. I don't really remember to whom he sent it. But there he wrote like a little vita, and he said that he started tattooing at school. He tattooed his friends.
Classic.
And so everything looks like he taught it. He was an autodidact. There's no record that anybody showed him how to do it.
And was he building machines? Did he how was he tattooing by hands? Like, what was the technology?
He worked with machines, and it can be assumed that he might have got them in the United States when he went there by ship. That would be really interesting for future researchers who are really into machines, for example. They could look at the Warlich machines and maybe see where the origin is from, who made them like that, maybe in the United States at that time. So I'm not really into this technical stuff. I can hardly put a nail into a wall with a hammer. as soon as there's like a machine involved, I'm out of there. But that will be interesting to look at, like how do the machines look like exactly, and where might they be from? So
because there definitely were American touring circus, like tattoo acts.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
And also German acts were touring Britain and touring America as well, right?
Yeah. You also see that they were Barnum and Barnum and Bailey. Barnum and Bailey. Barnum and Bailey. BB.
Bailey. Yeah.
Barnum and Bailey. Exactly. Yeah. They were in Hamburg actually at Finker's times already, and you can also assume that Finkel got inspired by it already because there's some drawings in his book. But so then definitely, and also through Warlich's trips to the United States, maybe he met Charlie Wagner. There's some articles where he talks about him as a friend. So maybe they met, and it's likely that there's been an exchange. Yeah.
Hey, are you enjoying the show? If you really like Beneath the Skin and you want to help support us, you can do so on Patreon. For little as £5 a month, you can help make this show possible, help us buy research materials. So if you like the show and you want to support us, consider kicking us a few quid a month. And you'll get everything from bonus episodes to Q&As, and you can even vote on what tattoo I'll get when we reach a certain subscriber count. Matt, have you got anything to say?
You should really definitely fund the Patreon, because tattoo history is massive, right? Deep, wide, complicated. We're covering some big hit topics on the main feed, but on the Patreon subscriber-only feed, we'll be getting into some really more interesting, niche, deep topics you don't want to miss out on. And honestly, the chance to kind of decide what Thomas gets on his body is probably just a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Subscribe, chuck us a few quid. Don't miss out on the chance to ruin Thomas's body forever.
Yeah, because I mean that sort of circus performing scene also was much bigger, much later in Germany than it was in England, for example. It was like it became a bit old-fashioned in England.
Yeah,
but in Germany, it was still quite a big thing. I mean, even earlier, right? Like from the 1870s right way through to probably the 30s, right? This sort of touring, sideshow, I guess people would call it.
Yeah.
But he was. I mean, the things that really struck me about Warlich. So you did this big exhibition in 2019. A few things struck me about him. One is the astonishing quality of his art, and there had been a sort of version of his sketchbooks published back in the 90s, maybe even the 80s.
80s.
80s as
81 actually, I think. Yeah, the
was
first
it that
edition.
early?
Yeah.
But you kind of republished it. If listeners haven't seen that book, you should absolutely get a copy of the Christian Warlich book from Palgrave, because it is a beautiful facsimile of the painted book. And he obviously had a line book, which was just the kind of stencils, but this sketchbook, I mean, do you want to describe it? Because I think it's such one of these, there's very few objects in tattoo history that really blow my head off, and that's one of a couple of the best things in the world, I think.
Yeah, I always I get goosebumps when I think how I saw this book and how it came together for the first time, because I wrote my PhD about tattoos and art, and I worked a lot about the butterfly motif. And I knew the Warlich book, like the little reproduction you were talking about from Oettermann, which was like extremely amazing and great that it exists and everything, but it is a very small scale, and the colors are not really as the original, which I was not aware of course, because I didn't know how big the original is or how it actually looks like. So I did research on this butterfly thing. I thought, okay, well, Warlich, there was this, there were some amazing butterfly images in this reproduction from Oettermann. And then I decided to go into the Museum für Hamburgische Geschichte, the Museum of History of Hamburg, where the part of the estate of Warlich is in the archive. And then I met with them, I think it was 2013, and they got me out all their tattoo stuff, and I went there, and there was this Warlich book, and first it's this like in black, covered in black from the outside, and the first surprise was like at least, I think, 6 times bigger than the Oettermann reproduction. I was okay, that's actually the book. Wow, it's bigger. And I opened it up, and I was like blown away, because the colors like jumped in my face, because it was like so well, still in such a good condition, and so much the colors were so much more vivid and so much better than actually reproduced in the older publication. And I was
I think probably still is, even after the stuff that I've helped get into museums, I think still probably the best Western tattoo artifact in any museum.
Yeah, it's really, really amazing. And then I saw all the other stuff they had, which was not really published or not in depth. And then I thought, well, okay, after my PhD thesis, I'll do a research project about Warlich, and that's how it all started. And yeah, and
how did the material end up at the Museum of Hamburg? It had gone into the collection of Tattoo Tio, right?
Actually, no. The stuff that's in Hamburg was bought by the museum after Warlich died, because the guy, the director, I think it was Hebernick, knew about Warlich. Warlich was back then already kind of a famous person in Hamburg, and he bought stuff from Warlich's wife for the museum just a couple of months, I think, after the death. And the stuff he didn't buy went into Theo's collection, which now is owned mostly by Willie Robinson.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. Oh, I thought some of the stuff had gone through not directly. That's super interesting, because it also shows, I think, how important Warlich is to the history of Hamburg, because no other museum ever actually has collected tattoo history like that. That's a really incredible piece of museum history.
That was like a great foresighted move, definitely.
Yeah. And Warlich was tattooing. And we've talked a bit about this on the program before, but tattooing was not very popular during the Third Reich era, right? In fact, I think it was, if it wasn't entirely banned, it was more or less banned. Certainly, tattooing on members of the Wehrmacht and stuff was not particularly welcomed. So tattooing was pretty unpopular in the Nazi period, but Warlich was sort of allowed to continue his work, right?
Actually, I tried to follow that question as well. There are a couple of pages about it in the thesis, and there was no ban, no official ban, and Warlich had a lot to do, so there was interested, like from all kinds of people, including National Socialists. And but on the other hand, there's also reports of people getting imprisoned in concentration camps, supposedly for their tattoos, but it's hard to prove that it was only because of the tattoos themselves. Because at one point there was like a lot of, how do you say, Willkür? People got imprisoned like for whatever. They looked in the wrong direction. Or how do you say Willkür in English? You know what I mean? It's I
wouldn't know the exact
like by accident, kind of. I don't like his nose. He comes with me, whatever. Yeah. So that was the one point. And the other point is that that also maybe the images that have been tattooed were not conform with the political system. So of course people might have been, or some definitely were imprisoned because of their tattoos, but not because there was like a total ban on tattooing. That was not the reason. So
a contributing factor to, I suppose, evidence of more degeneracy than just the tattoos themselves.
Or like asocial, is that how you say it? Yeah, kind of like, but it didn't have to. It depended on maybe even who had them. It's like completely like,
Yeah, there's a chapter in my first book about, the tattoos amongst prisoners of war and stuff and how they were dealt with. I was going to say, we will eventually, when we finally find, when they find the time doing an interview with the Schwulus Museum guys about Albrecht Becker, who, passed his time in prison tattooing himself because, the Nazis didn't hurt him enough, and he was a full-on S&M guy, and so he was. I mean, it's an awful story, but a fascinating one. He gave a really interesting interview to the Holocaust Memorial Project before he died, but he talks very movingly in that and sort of funnily about how, he was quite happy in some senses to be in prison in the early part of the war because he could hurt himself in peace.
Wow.
Yeah. It's such a darkly, he tells that story with such a smile on his face. And so the other thing that blew me away, right, about Warlich and in this context, is this tattoo removal. And I think one of your kind of theses about why he was, busy, at least, and certainly why he was kind of tolerated, was that he had a pretty successful tattoo removal technology.
Definitely.
At a time when when no one else did. And do you want to tell that story? Because again, like the work you put in on this thing, on this particular question in the exhibition was mind-blowing to me. So tell us about his tattoo removal.
So he was not only into tattooing, he was also in the tattoo removal business. And actually people remove tattoos in hospitals, doctors, but they did it in a surgical way. They cut them away. And in Hamburg, we have this pretty famous university hospital in Eppendorf. And the doctors from Eppendorf back then actually sent they were kind of more customers because they didn't have like a disease or anything, but they sent their tattoo removal customers to Warlich because they said that Warlich can do it better than they do it. So he didn't do it he didn't cut it away. He made it with a tincture, with a chemical tincture that the tattoos kind of dried up and fell off. So there was always this myth.
The photos are incredible.
Yeah, and there was always this myth about this tincture that he took it to his grave and stuff like that. And fortunately, within the research project, I was able to find the recipe for the tincture in an archive in the Hamburg City Archive, and we had a pharmacist in the museum, like a voluntary worker, and he remixed this recipe and found out that it worked. And the actual reason why it's in the archive is also really interesting because Warlich got checked by the health authorities and in the National Socialist time. It was, I think, in 1935, and because there was like a heater on a ship, who got an infected hand because he got his tattoo removed by Warlich, and the captain told the authorities that they should check on Warlich because this guy is making like my crew making it impossible for them to work. And then the authorities checked Warlich and came to another nice proof that in the Nazi era tattooing was not forbidden because they just checked his tattoo studio and came to the conclusion that it was the guy's own fault that his hand got infected because he didn't take proper aftercare. So,
he'd given them this recipe, right? And you were able to recreate it, and it's a mix of alcohol and solvent,
acids,
right?
Acids and ether and some other stuff.
And the photos are amazing because so you put it on and then you bandage it, and then a couple of days later you could literally peel it off.
Yeah,
right?
I think there are also like documents which describe the whole process, and I think it was a couple of steps, like put it off, make it again, and stuff. And after like a certain amount of time, you could take it off.
I'm looking at the photos. I assume this is a presentation that you gave. Nasty. Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's one presentation online, I think, also I talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bfr.buns.de.
Oh, that BFR, the BFR. I don't know what was wrong with me. I was so excited about this. It was like in the Corona time. I haven't talked to people for like ages, and it was so terrible, especially the first part of the talk. It was terrible. But yeah, I think in that one I have everybody. It's also on YouTube, I think. And in the back part of that presentation, it's about his removal, and it's even in English, isn't it? I think it's even in English.
I'm not sure. I'd have to check. I'm looking at the.
I think it's in English.
Yeah, the PDF of it is in English. So
yeah.
The composition according to your presentation is as follows: 1 teaspoon of distilled water, 1 teaspoon of ether, 4 to 6 lumps of potassium permanganate, and 1 very small pinch of salt. It's now shaken well, and I let 2.5 teaspoons of arsenic-free sulfuric acid very slowly into the side of the glass. The whole thing now burns. Now I let it cool down and can use it for 6 weeks. Oh,
yes.
Don't take tattoo removal advice from a podcast.
Or do. That's up to you.
Or do.
We don't give legal advice, financial advice, or removal advice.
Actually, there's some photos of Warlich where you can see his arm, and that there are like squares on his arm which are lighter, where the skin is lighter. So it's very likely that he tried it out on himself.
Wow. I mean,
he probably made it together with a pharmacist. It's not known how he got to this recipe, but I assume that he had somebody who created it with him, who was like a doctor or pharmacist or whatever.
I'm actually very interested in the process of how it works, because I don't know if it's because looking at the photo where it's like the big square tattoo has been removed and he's holding it up with the what's the term, Matt?
With tweezers.
He's holding it up with tweezers.
But also in a pub. Let's be really clear that he's doing this on a bar in a pub.
Yeah, so if you're coming to the LTS event on the 28th of April, we could do this for you if you want. But I'm trying to figure out like the actual chemical process on the skin and how because it looks like the skin underneath is in some way healed already.
Yeah, it must have been some kind of drying process, because the skin, the pieces are still in the museum. There's still artifacts of like examples of the skin, and it's like pergament. It's like a completely dried skin.
Yeah, Willie owns a few of them.
Yeah, exactly.
They are just like and they're quite different to like the dry preserved things at the Welcome, for example, that are thicker and really kind of dried post mortem. These are, as you said, they're very thin, but the colors are preserved perfectly.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how the actual wound would have healed. You would have had a pretty horrible scar, I would have thought.
But it's
you can
interesting
see the
because
scars on the Warlich photo. They're just scar tissue. It's brighter, but it doesn't look that terrible actually. So it's And what's really interesting.
Oh, I just find it fascinating because it's like, because it's so well preserved, it's not inducing some sort of like minor necrotitis of the skin where the top layer essentially dies and is taken off, like which would damage the cellular structure of the skin and then would make the tattoo look more kind of fucked up. So it's just, I think I'm just hung up on it because I'm trying to figure out. I have a chemist I'm going to ask about this.
Yeah, and
bring it back.
What's really cool is there was also one piece of prepared skin, which is a Warlich tattoo, actually, but it's not dried. It was removed physically, and it's a wet preparate, and that's in the Medical Historic Museum in Berlin, and that's like an actual Warlich tattoo as a preserved piece of skin. That's also pretty nice.
Wow,
amazing. I think again, on the long list of episodes we need to get around to doing, like the tattoo removal is one we've been talking about for a long time. People have been trying to find recipes for tattoo removal since before there was professional tattooing, actually, frankly. And the fact that Warlich had one, it worked, and no one else knew what it was, so you had to go to him.
Yeah,
like
but Matt, this totally rubbishes the the whole theory that tattoo regret is this whole new thing now. It's like, people have been regretting tattoos ever since they could get them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And there's several things I love about those photos. And I republished one of them in my book. But the fact that in the wider shots you can see he is doing this on the bar of a pub.
Yep,
that's so amazing. Back then, everything was better.
Yeah.
Ole, maybe you should do this as a marketing stunt for your spirits. It's like, we're going to do old school tattoo removal in honor of Warlich.
In the actual pub, maybe even. It's still a pub.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Still a pub. His artistic legacy, I think, is really interesting too, right? Because he was doing American style, sort of tattooing in Germany. I think really quite early. Like I think this idea that there's lots of American sailors and Danish sailors and probably all kinds of sailors coming through Hamburg in the early 20th century period. I'm really interested at the moment in the this stylistic thing that's happening in tattooing in the 1910s, where tattooers are moving between the United States, Europe, and Japan. And Warlich's doing a kind of quite recognizably modern tattoo style really quite early. Like he's working with quite thick line work. His stuff's very kind of, he's clearly inspired by the same kind of people that were inspiring Sailor Jerry a bit later on. Like, there's a lot of bits like Brooklyn Joe Lieber and Andy Libere, and like you can really see that unlike, for example, George Burchett in London, who is a bit more isolated in terms of like, London's a port, but like hasn't got the same kind of port culture as someone like Hamburg did and New York. You can really see that this sort of very global, cosmopolitan, quite kind of modern style that he's working in. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and it's like the fascinating thing is that like the images themselves are kind of the same among every tattooist of that time, but they have such the good ones have such a unique style that it's the same image, but it's completely different and special.
Did he sell Flash? Did he make sell machines? Did he have a tattoo supply business as well, or just?
Yeah, he sold stuff. There are letters proving that he sold stuff, but it seems like a little bit like as a side business more. And which is also really interesting. And we didn't really go in depth, but there's some kind of like reproduction sheets which were also in the exhibition, which seems like that he has done some kind of flash sets or was preparing it, but I have never heard of any flash back from Warlich's time that he sold that stuff. I've never seen a copy of anything, but that's really interesting because there must have been something in preparation or been thinking about or trying out, because he has this blue paper reproduction sheets of flash, which was like pretty interesting. They're also in the museum in Hamburg.
Yeah, and there are definitely designs. I mean, probably some of them would have just been drawn from the same print sources, but there are definitely designs that are familiar from, if you've seen American or British flash from the same period, like from the 20s and 30s, there are definitely kind of compositions and designs that are quite similar, for example, that I find definitely interesting.
And on the other hand, there are images like this famous demon with the knife through his head,
which is on the cover of the book.
It's on the cover of the book, exactly. That was also in the beginning of on the RAM, and that interestingly doesn't show up in other tattooists' portfolios a lot.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of people connect that with Warlich a lot. So
I was going to ask Ole as well, like, who were his, I suppose, contemporaries at the time in Germany? Like, who else was working?
In the beginning, Karl Finke, and Martin Ahlers. In the end, Herbert Hoffmann, people like that. Yeah, but there were not many. Like in Hamburg, there were just a few, and in the rest of Germany, I don't even know. So it's like
I think Hoffmann's style is very, very built on what Warlich did, I think.
Yeah, very Warlich inspired. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And Warlich died in 1964, and I think Hoffmann started in 1961, around the corner. And even in the end, Warlich described Hoffmann as his crown prince because Warlich was the king, and he even sent people to Hoffmann in the end because he said, "Well, no, I don't want to do it." Go to Hoffmann.
So Warlich was working all the way through, even after the war. Then, yeah,
till 1964. Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah,
and Germany was West Germany was a pretty interesting place to be in the 1960s as well, right? Kind of.
Yeah, definitely. In his pub, Hamburg was the British zone after the war, and there were a lot of English people in it, and his I found his grandson. Warlich's grandson, and he told me that in the pub on the one side there were the English people sitting there, and on the other side the Scottish people. It was like it was like a melting pot, definitely. Hamburg has always been a melting pot because it's a harbor city, but after the war, even more English influenced. For example, that's really nice. Also in the museum, in some works of Ahlers, there's some flesh of Martin Ahlers, and there's one image of Queen Elizabeth II. Because after the coronation, I think it was in 1953, right? That image, of course, was also popular in Hamburg because a lot of British soldiers and British citizens over here wanted to get that tattooed. So it was, contemporary stuff.
I mean, there literally was kind of discussions in the English newspapers about people, even before war broke out, about British soldiers or sailors not wanting to get tattooed in Germany anymore because of the nationalistic sentiment. So it's nice that people got over that. The class of his work outlived outlived all those rivalries. I really encourage people who are listening to kind of buy the book, buy the Christian Warlich book, because it is incredible. But also just kind of go on
and buy the ROM
image search, and buy the ROM if you're in Germany.
Yeah. And the book is in English as well. It's in German and English. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think Warlich's one of those people, I think, everyone's heard of Sailor Jerry and Cap Coleman, but I'm sure most people listening have heard of Warlich. But if you haven't, you need to check him out, because his just as an artist, I mean, just as a painterly artist as much as a tattooer, he's one of these rare guys in the time that's really genuinely a superb, interesting draftsman. Like, his drawing is like maybe the best ever. Like, his drawing is wonderful. And seeing how he constructs his, as I said, like, I think this is also quite unusual for the time, right? He for this big book of painted designs, he had a separate stencil book, a sort of line drawing book. And to see how he constructs his designs from line work up is, again, very unusual, and probably a kind of indication of why his tattoos were so good.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, so let's remind people your rum campaign is ohneei.info.
Exactly.
The link will be in the description.
Perfect.
And your Instagram is Nachlass Warlich. Is that right?
Yeah, Nachlass.Warlich. Yeah.
So Nachlass meaning like archive, I guess.
No, it's estate, actually.
Estate, yeah. So yeah, legacy. So NACHLASS.WARLICH on Instagram.
Yeah.
And yeah, anything else where people can find you? What's
I think that's the best way, like Instagram.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Like, honestly, I really hope that the court case nonsense goes well.
Thank you.
Not an enviable position to be in. So good luck, man. I'm sure it's stressful, and yeah, I mean, it is weird, isn't it? As you said, from tattoo historian to rum
definitely
taking on the dynastic might of the German spirits.
Yeah, getting sued by it's really crazy, but maybe for me that's what life's about. Like, look into a lot of different stuff.
Man, it's been an absolute pleasure.
So for me, thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on. This has been an incredible conversation. It's always great to be surrounded by people who are much, 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 much smarter than me. I learned so much.
I couldn't even install the micro, so what's smart about that?
Doesn't matter. My job is to make everything sound good. That's the most important thing. But also as well, I have a few people to thank on our end. If you are listening to this as it comes out, you are a patron on our Patreon, where you can get episodes like this early. You can get some cool other bits. I'm currently digitizing some tapes for some people, so there's some cool tattoo documentaries that you might never have seen on the Patreon. Some good convention tapes. I recently did one from Birmingham in the mid-90s, so if you want to see what a tattoo convention in the Midlands in the UK looked like in the mid-90s, some great stuff. But without further ado, it's thank you to Morpheus Ravenna, Chris Block, Seb Lewis, Ro, Reed Forden, Kirsten Wright, Kathleen Burkhardt, James Schick, Eva, Airtech, Edub, Dylan, Charlie Lightning, and Casey Wardell. And once again, if you are subscribed at the £15 tier, you will get a copy of Matt's book. We should also say, if you're interested, we could give you a choice of either of Matt's book if you would prefer Painted
Please,
People.
if you haven't had yours, please email us and tell us. I think we've got all of them out now. I think there's a couple of people who didn't reply to the last emails. If you haven't had a book and you think you should have had, email beneaththeskinpod@gmail.com.
And as always, follow us on Instagram at Beneath the Skin Pod. And it is thank you and goodbye from me.
Bye.
Bye.